So welcome everyone to Some Dates Today. I am your host, Bola Aldina, and with me is...
Mac Aldina? I'm also your host.
Oh yeah. With us today is our co-host, Mac Aldina. So let's get started. It's been a while since we did an actual podcast versus we've done a couple of lives the past 3 weeks. And those have been fun. So if you all haven't checked that out, definitely go ahead and do that.
Are we putting those on YouTube?
Yeah, they're on YouTube.
Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
So go ahead and check those out. And before we go anywhere, because I don't think we do a great job at this, please subscribe, like, share, and comment. Please, we implore you. Especially if you like the content. If you don't,
do it anyway.
Do it anyways, or share with your friends. share it with your friends who may. But yeah, so here we are. I'm excited about this episode that we're going to do. It's close to the end of the year. We're still in quarantine timeout, and of course, as a result of everyone being home, our TV consumption, entertainment consumption in general, but I think mostly streaming. Movies, shows have gone up radically, exponentially. So we thought it would be fun today to bring to you all 3 of the best shows or TV, shows / movies.
3 of the best, because I don't think we have.
We didn't make a list.
Not only did we not make a list, I think, I guess that would be what it is. Like, we haven't actually considered everything.
That's true.
These are the movies we have watched recently and thought, wow, these resonate with what we're trying to do.
Yes, that's a great way to put it. So 3 shows and or movies we would encourage you all to check out because we thought they were really great. So yeah, I'm excited to dive into this. What I love about movies, at least in shows more recently, is the opportunity to get a different perspective on life, see how other people see the world, which you don't always get in your day-to-day. And sometimes you're introduced to completely different worlds that you wouldn't even have thought of, which will then force you to either evaluate what's going on in your life or empathize, try to put yourself in the shoes of the characters that are being portrayed. So I've really, and I think that that has been amped up even more so recently, probably because of the all the things that we're doing. But I've really enjoyed some really great content lately on TV. I know you've always been a huge movie fan and TV shows in general. So what do you like about them?
About TV shows and movies? About
shows, movies.
Well, I mean, and this is one of the ones that we are going to watch right now is going to also do this well. But I mean, there are different types of shows that I like, and I like when it's done, what I'm going to say is done well. And for me, well means that when you immerse me in the world that you intend to tell me, that it seems like this is the type of thing that would happen in the world. So I could watch like fantasy movies or Game of Thrones where you have dragons and things like that, but then and be able to suspend disbelief. But then when you put me in the world of today's reality and like 24 and you're running around like the show 24 with Keith Sutherland, and you're running around LA within 1 hour from one place to another, it's like you told me this happened in 24 hours. Now this doesn't make any sense. But also done well for me is just the telling of the building of the characters, the diving into the insights that you get from people learning and growing, and the inner turmoils that they have to deal with. And
the conflicts.
Yes.
Inner turmoils within themselves or conflicts?
The inner turmoils within themselves and how the conflicts without reveal what kind of person this is.
Gotcha.
And not necessarily just told to you by somebody else saying he's an asshole, or even the idea that he's just an asshole, but that he's a complex human being with various different issues that he's having to deal with. He's not good or bad. And so I like when they're able to do that in such a way that you can relate because you deal with these same sort of inner turmoil, inner conflicts, and yeah. So I think when they can do that well,
I do think that's when the story is done really well, when you show the humanity and you can't really tell who the villains versus the heroes are. And even if you can perhaps understand the perspective of the villains and how they may have gotten there, and perhaps how you could have struggled with the same set of decisions that they've had to make and how they ended up where they are. I know you and your friends were talking about Game of Thrones as doing something along those lines, being done very well recently. But the other one that I was talking about is one that should have made our list, but I haven't seen it. It's called The Boys.
The Boys, yes.
That.
You haven't seen it?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, I thought. Oh, yeah, that's right. You were the one that hadn't seen it. Yeah, so we, a group of our friends, like another couple friends of ours, we went out and had a bonfire during COVID times, and chilled and hung out, and we were discussing The Boys. And yes, this is what I mean.
Because The Boys, I think, really does a good job of not really having a good sense for who's right, who's wrong, who are the heroes, who are the villains, what's motivating. I haven't seen it,
right?
And I'm speaking about it. Like I have.
So what one of our friends was saying is that he started off by saying that he thought it was gratuitous violence, especially with respect to the people who are supposed to be good. Like they just shoot somebody in the middle of the road, and he couldn't understand why that was necessary. And the response from the two of us and myself was that it's not necessarily that. What they're saying is that the world is not cut and dry. It's not black and white. Like these people, yes, they have to do some bad things. It's not necessarily like we're going to be categorically good. Like if killing is wrong, we're not gonna kill. But it's like it's the lesser of two evils. It's grays, and so it's like because I feel like this cause is noble, there are different things that I'm willing to do to get to the end, and that's the truth. Like a lot of us, like in life, are choosing the things that we will accept, right? Like as bad, like. And then certain things we won't. Like, for example, one of the easy ones I used to say when we were growing up, we used to steal cable. And my dad used to come up and be like, like just stealing cable. Mm-hmm. But then he's coming up to me and telling me I cannot go to the store and steal. Mm-hmm. It's like you pick and choose the things that you feel are, I guess, the boundaries that you set for yourself. You can say, okay, I can do this, but I won't do that. And then the other person, you're going to be over there condemning them and what they choose. And it's kind of like that. Your ends justify your own means. Mm-hmm. And so there isn't, and that's what I guess you were speaking to, like there isn't necessarily a good and evil. A good guy and a bad guy, if you really take that perspective. But I guess from what they were saying, it's, from what the movie guys are saying, not only is that the truth, but what we're going to consider good guys is what overall, I guess, us in this audience, Western, civilization believe to be the ultimate, good. Mm-hmm. Anyways.
So you would recommend that? The Boys?
I think it's like, for me, I never really like putting my stamp on stuff because I feel like, different people like different things. And if I go and I hype it up, then you might come in with expectations and then it's gonna not meet the expectations. And so I say, try it if you want. You may or may not like it. That's how I liked it. Is how I'm going to.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we jump into our list of 3 that we've both seen, one that I will also say that I watched recently, I know you probably haven't, is Before 30. It's on Netflix. It's a Nigerian miniseries.
Wow. When did you watch that? You talking about? You don't talk about. I'll be watching things without you. When did that happen?
It just did. I don't know. It was during the week. I think it was one of those days when I wasn't feeling too well, so I just put some TV on, and I watched.
Usually that's like Real Housewives.
I was caught up.
Oh, yeah.
I was caught up on my Housewives, so. But Before 30 was good. Typically don't even watch Nigerian shows or movies for various reasons, which doesn't really matter. But I thought this one was good. It was done well. It was acted well, but they also tackled some interesting topics. So it's set within the general context of Nigerian women. There are four of them, four friends who are looking to get married before the age of 30, because after that, at least in Nigerian culture, and I think in a lot of different parts of the world, after a certain age, it becomes very difficult for you to find a husband per se, and you become some sort of social pariah, I suppose. So they're going through their trials and tribulations, relationships, and really touched on some interesting sort of themes or concepts that you don't typically see in Nigerian movies. So I thought it was somewhat forward thinking. Well, let me not say that. I felt like it touched on some things that regular people like us go through, and humanized, just the typical Nigerian experience without doing it in an exaggerated way that
what is it called?
could sometimes be done. Before 30.
Interesting.
Yeah, you should watch it.
Is that a miniseries?
It's a mini. I think it was like 6 episodes.
Interesting. BBC?
6 episodes of 30 minutes each. I don't know if it's BBC. It's on Netflix.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
They're doing it.
yeah. So it was good. All right. So the 3 that we're really going to talk about, without diving too much into. So the first one is 40-year-old version. I know we didn't watch this one together. I saw it first, probably about 2 months ago, and then I told you to watch it. And when you got done with it, you were just, I felt like you were really blown. You were more blown away by it than I was. I enjoyed it for the comedy. So just a quick, and I'm probably not going to do the best job of sort of summarizing the movie, but the quick gist of it is there is a woman who I guess had been a comedian in the past, or some sort of writer. No, she had been a playwright. She had been a playwright, and had garnered success earlier on in her career. And I guess
she won some kind of award for a play that she wrote. So
yeah.
I think it was like maybe like the best under 30 or something like that.
Yeah, so this was before 30, done really well, and I guess was trying to find a second act to her success and just never really found it all throughout her 30s. And now she's about to turn 40, or maybe just recently turned 40.
About to turn, yeah.
And was taking a look at her life, and she found herself being the substitute teacher for, or just a teacher in general for an after school special kids situation. The kids had no respect for her, clowning her constantly about, why are you here teaching us when, you're supposed to be this, that, and the other. And she essentially took, she did a pivot and decided to start trying out stand-up comedy. And oh yeah, so you tell the story.
Oh my God. All right, yeah. So everything that you said. So
everything I said thus far, except for those stand-up comedy parts.
Yes.
Okay.
So she's she's about to turn 30, which is 40, which is definitely, it's so interesting how that is such a pivotal age.
I don't think just 40. 30 was pivotal. I remember 30 being pivotal.
For me. I don't know.
I think any decade is pivotal to people, because you're literally turning a page on that decade.
I mean, yes, to a certain degree, but I think 40, for example, specifically, I think people start to question their life choices. They start to question what happens the next.
I see your point. Midlife crisis.
Yeah, this is where around the midlife crisis, it's around the midpoint.
Yeah.
And you're also thinking 50 is 10 years away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really when people actually think mid, because most people think they live to 100. 100 is like halfway between, 50 is halfway between 100. And so, in a way, the reason why I think 50 is not the decade that people are like doing this, but 40 years is because it's like, oh my God, I'm 10 years from 50. What the heck am I going to do? What the heck have I been doing?
Mm-hmm.
And it's so interesting that age is the time. And it also says in the book that we read, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. It's a very old book, and the book that has been the foundation for just basically changing your life and the things that you have to do to grow rich. And they also talk about how 40 is that age too that people start to think about these sorts of things. And so or a lot of people get rich after 40.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is probably the reason. He had a ton of reasons. They're talking about like maybe there's women and all these other things, and you have to be a little bit like a womanizer, and that's how he talks about all these things in the book. But I think it really is about the fact that people are like, what the heck what have I been doing?
Mm-hmm.
And start really saying, you know what, I've got to put my foot to gas. But anyways, so she's going through that type of thing. In the beginning, she's talking to, because you watched it well before me, but like you also said, I also was really fascinated by it, and I was like, this is, when I came to you, I was like, this is Some Days Today. Mm-hmm. But anyways, she's in the beginning, she's talking to different people. She's telling them she's about to turn 40, and they're responding and giving her their thoughts on her. Like one of the kids is like, "Oh my God, I didn't know you were that old." But she's going through that questioning period. Like she hasn't gotten her second act and all that other stuff, and so she starts trying to become a rapper. Mm-hmm. I think she had seen some dude on the train, because this all takes place in New York.
Well, we're not gonna give it all away.
Okay, well, I'm not giving it all away,
okay.
But I know that New York is a big piece.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's also one of the big first things you'll see. Mm-hmm. So it all takes place in New York City, and she's on the train and she sees this white guy with a big butt. So I don't know if you remember the damn rap line, but it was just like, white guy with a black man's booty. Something like that. Black woman's booty. But anyway, so I think that was her first line, her first like attempt at rapping, and then she starts trying to rap. And mm-hmm. At 40, like that doesn't happen. That's a young person's age. In fact, in hip hop, you get clowned when you get older. Unlike other art forms where they appreciate the older guys. But anyways, so she just goes on her journey and trying to rediscover herself and her art and doing it authentically and living her life today. Mm-hmm. So
good. So what did you like about it? And I'm trying to hasten the process because I'm trying to make sure that we can also get into the other three. What did you?
That's why I put this up here so we can also be mindful of the time.
Okay.
So that way we do a much better job of meeting it. So if we're mindful. Anyways, what did I like about it? I mean, that is like I said. This is the definition of Some Days Today, and I mean, obviously this is a 2-hour thing, and she was already somewhat in the space of putting herself out there to be judged. But I think that is one of the most bold things that you can do. It's the way that she decided to say buck it, and decide I'm going to do something that's so unconventional that would literally get you ridiculed. Like, really, this 40-year-old woman was over here trying to rap? What are you doing?
There was a showcase she had where her students came. I think that was her first showcase. Her students came to watch her, and she froze on stage.
Wait, I don't remember that.
She didn't. You remember they came, they snuck in, those two boys, they snuck in, or they tried to get in. They finally got in. She was rapping, and then she forgot her lines. And the next day, they were like, what is going on? And clowned her even more so. But it just speaks to, just like you said, like literally putting yourself out there to do something that is not only is it not within your comfort zone, but you're maybe not even skilled at it yet, but still doing it anyways, and being exposed to ridicule and all of that. And as we know, as with all things, you get better over time, you get more comfortable with it the more you stick to it. But ultimately, it's about deciding that where you were, living a life of comfort is no longer acceptable, especially when you have so much more that you want to give. So it was about taking the leap to recreate a new version of yourself, which is why it's called the 40-year-old version. That was the old version. This is the new version of me, and I'm going to do it on my own terms.
Yeah. And there are some other, so the acronym, I think it was your old version, YOV. There was some other, live your own, there was your own, I don't know. There was some other words that she used for that acronym that I thought was also very interesting too, that I need to go back and watch and read. But it's really also about living authentically, because part of what she was also doing was trying to create a play that she thought was going to, that other people, like the white folks, the people who had the check, wanted to have seen, and like, this is what I think about the Bronx. I think it was the Bronx that she was living in, and she wanted to say, no, this is not my experience. I want to live authentically. This thing is trash. And so it was just also about her putting herself out there. And I think
by creating authentic art. So not necessarily putting art out there that doesn't reflect her perspective just for the sake of making money.
Yes.
But doing something that you're inspired by, that is also authentic to your experience.
Yeah, and truly saying, here's who I am. And this is the thing I think about artists that makes them. I was saying this yesterday when I was watching something else that we were watching. What was it that I was watching? We were watching the show, the music video for Tadao. I can't forget. Masigo, I think is their name. But Tadao, we was watching it when.
Oh yeah.
And it feels like they were capturing it for the first time, but there's no way. Like the way the camera movements were. And to me, it was like, did they like cut and rehearse and redo? Because it just felt like it was just him in the moment, like just really fully enjoying it. But
we should put a link to that video or that song. I don't know if it's known, but
it's really good. I'm pretty sure it's known, and if it's not, Masigo, Tadao. But yeah, we can definitely do that. But the point that I want to say with respect to it is that artists are, for me, the best type of human beings, because they are truthfully saying, here I am. And not only are they, here I am, here's what I'm feeling at the moment, here's me uninhibited, here's me just living and being and feeling whatever the vibe is at that moment. And whether you're looking at it and saying, yeah, I'm feeling it, or you're looking at it and like, the fuck is this? I don't care, because this is me being. And I think that's what she was doing at her 40-year-old version, putting herself out there. And not only are they doing this, I don't care, but they're doing it in such a way that if you are able to connect to it, it's beautiful, because music, for whatever reason, is spiritually something that we feel within our, like it doesn't exist to allow us to live, physically, or to procreate or any of these things. It's something that, for whatever reason, the combination of sounds make us feel good. And so like they're expressing themselves in a way that is beautiful in that way, but then saying, if you feel it, you feel it. If you don't, you don't. Forget you, because this is
my
me.
truth, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And I would love to be able to get there.
Yeah.
And,
I think
her
it's a journey.
Her boldness was short. I don't know how many people.
Oh, you mean between where she was compared to taking the leap? It wasn't a long period. No, and that's, once again, when you talked about some days today, that's really the point. You can decide to flip the switch at any point, at any moment. It's just a matter of coming to terms with it, that's what you want to do. So yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. I like that. I would highly recommend.
And it's also very funny.
It's funny.
She's hilarious. You'll be cracking.
Yeah. So yes, 40-year-old version on Netflix. Check it out. The next one is that we want to talk about is another show as well, or is a show. It's on HBO, right?
Which one?
Euphoria.
Okay. Yes. HBO.
So
yes.
Euphoria. So why don't you give a high-level summary of Euphoria? We don't have to go into great detail of it, but yeah, go ahead.
Great show. The main character is played by Zendaya. I don't know her last name, but
I think she's just one of those one-namers.
Maybe. Okay.
Like Prince.
Madonna.
Oprah. Who knows? What is Madonna's last name? Nobody knows. Does she have a last name?
She's
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
a one.
What about Prince?
Yeah, the artist formerly known as now.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Anyway,
Zendaya.
Zendaya is the main character, and it takes place in a high school, I believe in California, somewhere in California. I don't remember. But there's a whole full season, and then the one we're going to talk about is the special episode that they have. But anyway, she is a child dealing with turmoil, and her father passed away of cancer, and one of the ways that she coped was to start taking drugs, and she becomes an addict to cope with the issues, and her mother and her daughter are struggling with it because the mother has to deal with all of the issues and picking up and having to continue to raise their family, and now she has to deal with her daughter, who is now an addict.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also all the dynamics of like sexual behavior in high school, because this is a high school child, and the various different things that you have to deal with, including like gender identity, because there's one of her a person who moves into that town who is transgendered. She befriends her, and they form a really close relationship, and it's all the things that you have to deal with in a town. It's also, I think, a really relatively small town. There's this man who basically anyway, I don't know how much that's important, but but this is to say that again, one of the reasons why this is done well is just confronting all the different characters and showing you the complexities of all these characters and what they deal with, and doing it in such a way that is not hoaxy. It feels real.
Mm-hmm.
Especially the last episode. Well acted.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I don't.
So that was season 1.
That was, yeah.
So.
But this one in particular was really done well too, I thought.
Yeah. So I want us to. So the show we're going to talk about is season 2. So season 1 ended with Zendaya going through all her troubles. It's I think it's a 13 season show, so you can catch it on HBO.
13 episodes.
13 episodes.
Is it 13? No, it might be 10. I don't remember.
But really good. I mean, critically acclaimed. I think Zendaya got all sorts of awards for it. So the fans of the first season were really anticipating the second season. And of course, because of COVID, it impacted their shooting schedule and just all of the work that they had planned. So they decided to drop a show that is more specifically focused on 2 of the characters, who is Zendaya and her sponsor.
Her alcohol, or Addicts Anonymous, I don't know.
Yeah, narcotics, NA, Narcotics Addicts Anonymous. Narcotics Anonymous. So her sponsor. So the whole scene took place in a diner, and it was the 2 of them sitting across from each other, talking about Zendaya's addiction. At the last season, I think she was working through the addiction and she was in a better place and she was sober. But the show opens up with her having relapse, and now he it's talking her through that. But what was so amazing about it was really just the conversation. So it wasn't necessarily so focused on the topic of addiction per se. I think that was in the background, but they really did a good job with the dialogue of exposing just the humanity in humans in general, what we struggle with, the meaning of life, why are we going through all of this, what is the purpose, what role does religion play, if God truly does value us, why does he spare some over others? I mean, there were so many topics, so many themes that they played with, and even the idea that her sponsor, who at least in the first season was portrayed as this wise sage, who's got it together and still cool type of person, they dove a bit back into his backstory, and we understand that he's also struggling with some things that are very human. So once again, going back to the idea of, heroes are not always 100% heroic. They're not always acting. They're not always perfect, right? We all have backstories at any given moment. We can do something to betray our values, but there's always the next moment to be better. So many different concepts discussed, but it was really, really good and well done. And I know, once again, we didn't watch it together. You watched it the night before.
I tried. We started watching. No, I didn't. We started trying to watch it the night before.
Yeah, and
we both fell asleep.
Okay.
We both fell asleep, and then
not because it wasn't good, but more because
we're tired.
And
old.
We're 40-year-old. This is the 40-year-old version. We can't stay up in the movie.
But the next day you had something to do that morning, and while I was waiting for you, I was like, I'm gonna watch it right now.
Yeah.
You finished it, and then when you got back, you finished it yourself. But yes, very there's so much going on there, but I think, again, with respect to how things are really good, like the dialogue, one of the things that I do when I watch TV now, so I don't miss what is said, is I watch it with a caption. And so I'm reading the words just in case it doesn't come out clear. But one of the things that I was doing, because it was just so hitting me, and a lot of times when it's done well, you don't realize why, you don't evaluate all the different ways. But it was like, oh my God, this is being done so well. And so when I was reading it, because people when they act, there's lines on paper. This is not us having this conversation right now. But I was reading it, and as I was reading it, I was paying attention to not only the pauses and the searching for what I'm going to say next, as if it's not on paper, and the movement. Like I'm sitting here doing this, and it's like, like you have to, like I've tried acting before when some class that I took somewhere in
high school?
in middle school, no, in college.
Oh wow, I didn't know.
Sometimes, yeah, they throw stuff. You gotta throw one of these here. You gotta put this on if you wanna, if you wanna graduate, you gotta throw it. So acting, I think, was one of them that I did, and the shit is like, because you could be sitting here like, yes, and when you were going to, and you don't realize that in reality, in life, people are constantly moving.
Yeah.
That's how it looks real, and you are pausing and you're searching for words. Even though the words are there, you have to be able to realize all of that for it to seem real. Like it could be mechanical, but when it comes off, it looks like
seamless. Yeah.
Exactly. But anyways, that's why one of the things.
So you were impressed by the acting.
Oh, yeah, it was really done well.
Yeah.
And I was also impressed by the gentleman whose name I should actually go look up, and how he came across. It was just like, wow, this is a person who I'd like to sound.
You mean the sponsor?
The sponsor. Who I'd like to sound like. Whoever wrote the scene, it's clear, or it seems to me that if they didn't go through this themselves, that I don't know how they're pulling this out. Like, having thought of all the different points where people would push back. Like, I will tell you that, you need somebody bigger than you to be able to do it. But you know what, this is happening. And then the back and forth, and him being able to explain it. Sometimes you can rush through that. That's when it's not done well. You're going to rush through giving the answer, but it's like, No, in this particular instance, it would be a back and forth. Let's take you through that entire journey. And I thought it was done well. The answers were done very well. How they were trying to explain this idea of, like sometimes you have to just give it up to a power that's higher than yourself. A lot of people will struggle with that, like you were saying, because of certain things that they found that doesn't seem fair. Don't tell me that there's a purpose for everything. That's not enough for me. Don't tell me that there's a God who is picking and choosing who's dying and who gets to live. And what does all of that mean? And anyways, it's...
what I love about the response they had for that was by saying, you've got to believe in poetry. And I just thought that...
No, you gotta say more than just poetry. I think poetry would come off to those who are listening as just, people speaking words.
Right. And I'm gonna try to explain it, but I'll probably mess it up. But essentially, what he's saying is, who knows why things happen? What we know is there's a greater power, energy that is beyond us. That that you can essentially surrender to when things become too much. And when you start asking, well, why this, why that, and how can I trust in something? You can just trust in the fact that, I get up every day, and just the poetry of, none of this makes sense, but we do it anyways. We get up every day and we're committed to pushing through it. That in and of itself is art. Because sometimes, art, like you said, using the word gratuitous earlier, it's something that doesn't necessarily serve a known purpose, especially when you think about music. You get up every day, you listen to music, and you dance. Universally, people enjoy dancing, moving their bodies. People enjoy music, but we don't really know exactly what function or purpose it serves. So we call it art. And it's the same as poetry in general. But I think
the beauty of the environment. Why do we need to see the beauty? It's just like,
capturing paintings and all of that, and it taps into something. But that essentially is the nature of what we like. We are in a dance with this life. We get up every day and we're trying to sort it out. There's a role we play. There's a role that we expect the greater power to play, our fellow human being. There's just this dance that we're all in, and we don't really understand it. But it's compelling enough for us to get up every day and, do it, because life is poetry. I'm not doing a good job of conveying it, but I just thought that was beautiful. Because that answers a lot of questions that, we don't have the answers to all of this, but there's beauty in it. And it's because of the beauty that we do it. And I think that could be enough.
Yeah. I'm going to try to see if I can explain it too. But before I do that, I want to say that I think the reason why it's important that people put that piece in it, like the idea of finding something greater than yourself, is because he said it's because of other things, people will fail you. You'll even fail yourself. But I think what it is you have to, if you don't have a purpose, if you don't have something greater, it's very hard for you to keep going in the face of what can seem to you like just hardships. Like, why am I going to continue to move forward when I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel? If I see the light at the end of the tunnel, then I have my purpose. That my purpose is to get to that light. But if I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, it's the fact that without seeing, this is why they call it faith, and this is why it's something that I cannot see, but I believe in the fact. Trust the process, as they would have said in Philly.
Philly, Darden.
No. Well, they do say that Darden as well.
Who said it in Philly? What Philly?
Philadelphia. Okay, so Sixers.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
They had this whole thing. If you're a sports fan, you
gotcha.
understand what
Yeah,
it is. But yeah.
The numbers.
they were just doing this whole thing where they believed it would eventually lead to success. Where they were just like losing and picking up, draft picks and all that stuff. But anyways, trust the process. It's like you don't necessarily see it, but at the end, it's there, and that's what faith is about. So it's definitely necessary, and it's definitely necessary when you can't figure out why you should think this way, because really everything is perspective. Because you can be in a certain situation and suffering, and the same person could be in that same situation and be completely happy depending on their perspective. But if you're in that suffering perspective, it's going to be very hard for you to see anything else. And so while you're there, I cannot describe to you what I'm over here in the light somewhere. I'm seeing the light. I want to describe to you why it is that you will get there, but you're in the dark. Like you're blind. You've never had sight. You've never had vision. I'm sitting here trying to describe something to you that you could never even fathom. So what I'm telling you is trust. Yeah. Just trust. When you get there, you will see it, and then you'll be like, "Oh my God, yeah, I see why now."
Yeah.
And so, if I cannot tell you why it is that it's true, I'm telling you, just have faith. That's all I can tell you. Have faith. And so, if you can't figure out how to have that faith, then you're in big trouble. And so that's why it's like have something bigger than yourself. And with respect to the art piece of it, or the poetry in it, like if you can't believe in a God, then believe in the fact that, like, yes, things are screwed up, but there's also beauty in it. Like when you walk out and you see the sunset, why does that happen? Why did atoms just come together and create this life? Why is it that you get to be here and that person? Why does Otis Redding, because that's one of the examples, that why does Otis Redding get to sing and have such impact? Why is the ocean so powerful? All of these things, there's poetry and all of that. And if you can see that, then you can potentially see how it is that there's a chance for it to be beautiful as well.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. And what I also took away is, in addition to all of the beauty you see in the world, there's beauty in the fight. There's beauty in your story. There's beauty in the things that you're looking to bring forth. And anything that is
there's beauty
worth,
in all of it.
There's beauty in everything.
If you can get there, this is what they say, like you can literally just be looking at flowers in nature and just seeing how everything just, it's like there's beauty in everything that's happening. And if you can capture that, it's hard to describe that, but if you can understand that poetry, and that's when you could see this so much greater. Yeah.
There's so many themes and concepts played with during that episode. I mean, it was really jam-packed with a lot of fascinating concepts that speaks to the plight of human beings, what we all experience in general. So there's not enough time to go through everything, but another one that I quickly wanted to talk about is the one around, when you've done something terrible.
That's the one I wanted to hit too. Because that is important.
Yes. Do you want to
explain? No, you can.
Okay.
If you want me to do it, I can do it. But.
So essentially, Rue, who is the main character, at one point exposes that, she is this terrible human being, and so terrible she's addicted to heroin. The guy asks her, "Do you want to be clean?" And she says, "Even after doing all the shitty things that I've done, putting my parents through this, my sister, I'm a terrible person. To be honest, I still don't want to get clean, And she was like, "How that makes me a terrible person? And look, I even did something so terrible to my mom, I threatened to kill her or what have you." And she was really grappling with it, that why would I'm a throwaway child at this point because I've done something so egregious, I can't come back from it. And he was saying, he essentially was saying, number one, we've all done terrible things. And the question is, why do we do those terrible things, particularly when they make us feel bad? And, he sort of walked through, by the time he got done with the line of questioning, it had to do with the idea that, you saying I'm a terrible person is not only a harsh punishment for yourself, but I also love how he said it's also a cop out.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
so when we do something that we're not proud of, you're supposed to get up at a certain time. You didn't get up. Oh my God, I'm the worst. You say these things about yourself. When are you the worst? There's so many great things about you, so many great things of value that you add to the world. But ultimately, also, when you say you're the worst, you're basically releasing yourself from the obligation to be better.
Yes.
Because once you've decided this is who I am, so why try anyways, then you've essentially settled into a lesser version of yourself, which is beautiful and fascinating. And not only do we do it to ourselves, he says, but that's the reason why this world has just kind of gone the way it has, because it's so easy for us to throw people away and label them as the worst, not possible of redemption, that people end up not trying anymore because we don't create that space. So it's about being giving yourself grace, which we've talked about, but also others grace, because a lot of times you end up doing things that you're not proud of, but that in and of itself does not make up the totality of who you are. And you always have to be able to put those things in context. And even when you disappoint yourself, the task is to find out, why am I not acting to my values, according to my values? Why am I doing things that are disappointing myself? And find out the reasons behind that, as opposed to holding on to the act itself.
Yeah.
It's a very, just practical concept that can be applied to all of us, but that we don't always think about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly it. Like the episode is about an addict, but really it's about just life and what we deal with. This just happens to be the problem that she's dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a thing that's been really big with me lately, specifically after, I know you had talked about this before, I think probably because you read that book, but since I'm rereading the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, he talks about problems, and basically you can't not have problems. And so life is about problems, and
Mm-hmm.
solving problems is really what makes you happy. You don't really understand this, but like a lot of people who think that they are happy in the whatever life that they're living, some people are happy. They're like, this is good for me. The problems that I'm dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
While I'm here, I'm okay with. Like, if the problem is boredom or whatever the case may be, then I'm dealing with, this is how I solve that problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but there are other people who, in their minds, in reality, they want something else, but they're afraid to be dealing with these other sets of problems, the different types of problems. In any case, without delving too much into the problem thing, I think it's very important that you understand that there's no, like, Rue in this episode talks about how drugs is the only thing that keeps her from killing herself, as if once you're dead, you're guaranteed that there's no problems on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're calling these things problems, but really they're just things having to do with the fact that life is life.
Mm-hmm.
There's a potential that you leave this earth and get reincarnated into another life where you're dealing with problems, or you become another being or whatever. This thing is maybe dealing with quote unquote problems.
Mm-hmm.
Based on the way that it has to its particles has to interact with other particles, or whatever the case may be. But we're calling it problems, but it's just the nature of living, and your perspective is what makes you think it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
In any case, I think what we do, like you were saying, without repeating, or a little repeating, is just that we cop out by saying, well, since I've already done this, it must necessarily mean that I'm bad. It's harsh, because bad is ridiculous considering everybody does bad things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also a cop out because it says, now I don't have to go through the effort that it takes of solving this problem that I have,
Mm-hmm.
of being better. And so that's just life. And when we realize that, that's when you forgive yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And say to yourself, okay, it's fine. I'm a human being. It's fine that I can do that. Now I'm going to go and figure out how to be better, and not beat yourself up over it, but being okay with the process of improvement.
So yeah, very good show. Check it out. I can't wait for the next. I think what they're planning on doing with this season is diving deeply into each of the characters, so we have a better sense of their backstories.
I think the next attempt is to dive into, I can't remember,
the transgender girl's story. That'd be interesting.
I forget.
All right, so we're done with Euphoria, and then the next one. The last one is a movie we watched on Prime, Amazon Prime last night. It's called The Sound of Metal. I'll have you explain it because I don't always do a good job. It's called The Sound of Metal.
Okay, The Sound of Metal is about a musician couple. They live in an RV. They obviously tour different places. It's very heavy metal. I guess that's also the play on the word, and I say play, and you'll find out why I say play on. It's heavy metal. They're like, definitely not my genre of music. She's screaming in the beginning. She's out there screaming, and he's just like beating on the drums. Mm-hmm. And he finds out that he is losing his hearing, mm-hmm. and he has to basically he's trying to get up the money so he can do some kind of operation that's potentially going to get his hearing back. But in the meantime, he's also an addict, and so he's trying not to relapse, and he needs to go to a AA meeting or Narcotics Anonymous, I guess, meeting where they do this for people who can't hear. Like you can be in your circle and you're not able to hear. So it's a combination of being for AA, but also for the deaf. Mm-hmm. And so they have to learn how to sign and all this other stuff, and his struggle with that. Mm-hmm. And his girlfriend has to continue to go on and try to make money while he tries to deal with his addiction. And without giving too much away, it's mm-hmm. everything that happens as this unforeseen circumstance in his life happens, and what happens to their relationship, his relationship with himself, and how he deals with this change.
Yeah. Without giving too much away. Yeah. Because it's such a good movie, and I think it may be difficult to talk fully about it without giving too much away, but I also don't want to spoil it for others. So I don't know, for those who haven't seen it and who want to see it, maybe we can do like a blooper. What do they call those things? A blooper, when you're about to give something away. So
spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Okay, we'll have to think about what the spoiler would be.
Yeah. But essentially, it's exactly what you said. So how I would put it in my own words is, because I was watching it, and when we think about having the bottom pulled out from you unexpectedly at any given point, I think that's most people's nightmares, right? Life is good today, you're having a great time, you have your girlfriend with you, you're living the life, you're doing the work you want to do, you're healthy, everything is great. One moment, the next moment, something happens that could completely change it. And people are going through this every day. People get into accidents, people are getting diagnoses of cancer. People are losing their husbands or wives unexpectedly, children. There's just so much happening that can happen because we live in a world that's very much outside of our control. But what we want to do as human beings is we want to control, because it's that predictability that makes it easier for us to go about our days and know what we need to bring, what sort of wherewithal we need to bring to our daily activities. But what was so fascinating is one moment he's perfectly fine, next moment deaf. And as a result of him going deaf, his whole life gets taken away from him. The music that he loves to do, the RV that he's living in with his girlfriend that he loves so dearly, his sobriety that he's hung on to for so long, his independence of just being someone who can move around. And you see someone who was living a complete in control life one moment, and the next moment completely out of control, everything taken away from you, the love of your life has left you, and how do you deal with that? So it was so funny when, the first I guess days, weeks that he arrived at this place, just how angry he was. Like, he really was just trying to fight it with his every being, and just got so angry, which is understandable. And I think that's the reaction that a lot of us have, especially when you get news that just seem to be unfair. Your child is killed unexpectedly. How can you not be angry by that? So, but I think what was so fascinating about this particular story is, number one, it shows that things can completely go awry at the drop of a dime, without you expecting it. Number two, how you deal with it is now up to you. Because the people that you typically will lean on sometimes may not be there for you as a source of support. So you also have to make sure that you have as much as you want to build a community, you want to build a group of supporters, people who can help you get through this life by yourself. Ultimately, it's you, yourself, and you. Who's going to have to get through this. And you have to be mentally strong. You have to be physically strong, spiritually, all of those things have to be intact. Otherwise, whatever life throws at you, you may not be able to handle. And I think it was showing us that ultimately, you're gonna have to figure out how to get through this, because now you're by yourself. So it's, how do you move from that space where you had a sense of control, now you've lost everything, and you've got nothing but yourself that you can rely on to get yourself out of this. I mean, there was a scene in the moment when he was just like, you are my heart, and you literally are leaving. I ain't got it. I don't have it. I'm out here by myself with no script. I don't know how to do this. So, it was so touching, because it makes you realize that could be any one of us at any given moment, where you're just here by yourself and you've got to figure it out. And what you bring to bear, how your mindset, the mindset you bring to the table is going to be critical in terms of how well you survive it. I have some other stuff that I want to say, but I don't want to go into. Okay.
No, go ahead.
So that was the first part of it. And another part that I thought was so beautiful is as he starts to transition. So for me, the first part is, and I talked to you about this, is the struggle between, wanting to hold on to your current life and being scared of your future life. So how do you balance that? One thing that is that we know for sure is change is inevitable. But a lot of us struggle so much with change. Obviously, for the most part, change is gradual for most people. So we don't see it. It's not something that's so jarring, at least from an all-encompassing perspective when it comes to our lives. But yeah, for some, it's going to be jarring. You're going to have to be forced to get into that new phase, whether or not you want it. So we have to understand that can happen. But it is the question of, why do we try so hard to hold on to something even when there's no longer anything there for us? And why do we find it so difficult to embrace the new, especially when we know that life is always changing? So I think it's playing around with that concept of new is not necessarily bad. And for him, we come to find out later that, he could actually make a life in this new environment that he's in. But his mindset, he's so stuck in the life he had. So he's living his days, wasting opportunities. Relationships are going to shit just because he's so focused on, the life he's had. And a lot of us, we cost ourselves dearly because of that. So, yeah.
So, yes, agreed. I think the theme for me, now that I'm thinking about all of this, because I know when we talked about this, I was trying to see what it was, but the theme that I want to say, the way that I want to describe it, and the minute you describe it, it kind of like limits it, because now you put some words around it and people start to associate the words that you use and how they think about it with this, but just also to try to add some structure and to give us some kind of direction I think for me, at the very least, it's like acceptance of not just reality, but like acceptance of reality, acceptance of the idea of problems, quote unquote. But that's why I want to say acceptance of reality, because that is reality, the acceptance of life, in everything. Like, for example, with the first one, 40-year-old version, it's accepting the problems, the issues, the whatevers that comes with wanting to be your authentic self. I'm 40, I'm going to be a rapper and start doing what I want to do. That comes with all these different things that are happening. People looking at me and saying that this is weird, like, you know, ridiculing me or whatever. Losing the potential backing of people who want us to act in a certain way. And so accepting that and saying, okay, I'm okay with that. That's the life I'm going to live. The second one and this one are more similar in the fact that we're dealing with people who are struggling, not making a decision that I'm going to accept this because this is what I want in my life, but struggling to see that they need to accept reality in order to be able to deal with it effectively. And for Zendaya, who's dealing with these issues and questioning why, and now having to, you know, find a self-destructive way of dealing with this problem and not actually solving it but masking it. And then with this gentleman who's just got hit with something, and instead of saying, accepting this is reality and saying, okay, now how do I deal with it? How do I solve that problem? How do I embrace this new life? Because, and then being able to have that perspective once you've accepted it, to then be able to see the poetry that we talked about, the beauty and everything. Because then when you are able to, that's when you've forgiven yourself. You know, that's when you are now able to live happily because you're seeing the beauty and you're like, okay, I'm not only am I now accepting that I have to do this, I'm accepting it and being happy in the process. And that's why you could be happy in any situation, because, you know, whatever situation you're in, there are problems. You can be happy in it if your perspective is a certain way. If you find yourself in a different situation, you could be like, all right, I'm accepting it. I'm going to accept that these are the problems, and I could be happy in seeing the beauty in this and then be able to live and go forward. And it's that is so difficult for us to do and accept, you know, that I think is required for you to not be miserable.
Yeah. I think acceptance is definitely key. I think another concept for me is that change does not have to be seen as bad. Should not always. I mean, there's some changes that, because we're so attached to this physical world, that we resist, that we don't want. But ultimately, life changes. Things change all the time. Life is constantly purging. Things die and grow and bloom in different seasons, but it remains beautiful nonetheless. So I think it's our attachment to our experiences, the current manifestation of the lives that we have, that makes it so difficult for us to embrace change. And that's actually what limits us so greatly. Because being deaf is probably not ideal, particularly if you are someone who have had hearing. I mean, there are people who are born deaf who don't necessarily see it as a handicap, you know, because that's just how they live their life. And, you know, they can find beauty in, you know, either the silence, which, whatever, like your soul can thrive in whatever environment, because your soul is it's not necessarily tied to your physical body. You know, there are different ways that it can find ways to have joy, you know, which ultimately is what we're looking for. But I think because we're so attached to the physical and the moments that we have, we interpret those things as, you know, what's worth hanging on to, as, you know, what gives us the joy and the peace, when it actually, your soul can find peace probably in almost any environment if you allow it to. So I think it's the idea that change is bad, and, you know, if anything is different from what I'm doing right now, then I'm going to reject it all the way, as opposed to, you know, having a curiosity about change. And I think, you know, if you're curious about what's to come, it opens you up to the possible. I mean, yes, you've had hearing all this time. Now I get to experience the world as a deaf person, you know, that could be seen as an opportunity. You get the opportunity to live two different lifestyles, two different lives completely. You know what it feels like to have hearing, and now you can understand how to navigate the world without. So I think it's being curious about change and the possibilities that are in those opportunities that makes it easier for us to handle change. But I just thought it was so amazing because it did a really good job of speaking to the inevitability of life, which is that ultimately we don't have control over anything can happen at any given point. And you just have to surrender to that inevitability. Has nothing to do with if you're good, bad, otherwise, or whatever. Life can happen. And then at that point, do you have what it takes to shift into whatever comes next? And if not, I think this is the time to really start kind of bolstering yourself up in those areas to make sure that who would have thought 2020 is the perfect year that we all need to realize it could all change at any given moment. And you have to be ready. You have to be resourced enough. And as individuals, it's your psyche, your mindset that's really going to power you through. So if you have the right mindset, you can definitely take on whatever is to come, but you have to work on your mindset. And then lastly, for me, it's really just appreciating the possibilities within change. Being able to recognize the beauty, the poetry in this new version of your reality so that you can fully enjoy it and live it to the best as well.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say on this is human nature. A lot of times I need to have things explained to me, and I think also people probably also need to have things explained to them so they can, as opposed to just saying, okay, well, I know what the path is. You know, like somebody has told me what the path is. A lot of times you want to understand why you're here first, regardless of what the path is. And I think part of the reason you want to explain it is the same reason why Rue was questioning this whole idea of God and whatever the case may be. It's like, why is it that it's true? And the reason you want to have that done is because you don't want to question whether or not that this path is the way to go. Because if you're questioning whether this path is the way to go, it's the same thing with not having faith, right? It's like, am I going to continue going here if I don't know that this is the place that I should be going? That's why a lot of times we need to have these things explained. I start off this way because I think because I want to try to explain why people are, afraid of change or afraid of putting themselves out there and being ridiculed and whatever the case may be. And I think it's because, like the way that we have evolved, the programming that we have, the mechanisms and the tools that we have for protecting ourselves are very blunt tools. They're not precise enough to be like, okay, this is this type of fear, this is this type of fear, this is that type of fear. It's all it does is it's fear. It's one of the things, like just like pain, like you can have pain and it tells you got to do something about it, but it's just pain. It doesn't tell you this is a certain type of pain. And so and that's why it's so difficult to see the nuances and things, is all you're feeling, and especially if you're not analyzing enough, going down deeper and deeper and trying to understand exactly what's causing it. All you are doing is your body is giving you the tool that it has: anxiety, fear, pain. And all you know is, oh my God, there's fear, pain, and I don't know what the heck to do with it. And that's one of the things that it does to try to protect you. Change, like you said, could be problematic because you need routine, because you know that this works every time. You mess around and go do something else, you might end up falling off a cliff. You might end up dealing with some kind of predator that kills you. And so these types of things is what causes you to kind of remain in doing something that but it also is against part of what we are given as human beings, which is different than other types of animals, is to go out and pursue and live and self-actualize. And that also requires you to face those fears and to experience all of these things. And so there's two dichotomies. And so, you have to now use your upper thinking capabilities, your frontal cortex, to say to yourself, okay, I realize that these fears are there, but I can be okay with being a person who has those fears, forgive myself for those fears, and forgive myself for my mistakes, and then still go through and pursue you know, the things that I have to do. And you have to do that consciously and with the knowledge of eventually those things become routine. And then I go on to the next year and those things become routine. And, you know, even if you don't see it, having that faith and stepping out onto the limb.
Yeah. No, well said, well summarized. I think these have been really good shows, you know, when we think about what we need to bring to bear for 2021. You know, I'm looking to close out 2020, sort of just prepping myself and making sure that I'm right mentally, and I'm well positioned to take advantage of whatever is to come in 2021. And I think these are just great reminders of the things that you need to do. So great movies, great shows, so you guys definitely check them out. Of course, we're getting ready to wrap up 2020, so look out for our next episode when we do the next when we do the best of 2020. So we'll you know, we did something similar last year, so we'll go through various moments in 2020 and talk about them, so definitely stay tuned for that. But thanks for joining. Hope you've enjoyed this episode. Like we always say, please be sure to subscribe. That's very important. Like, share, and comment. So yeah, let's close it out.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Some Days Today, where we encourage you